Welcome back to another UFC fight prediction video. In this video, I'll be predicting the prelim fights for UFC 235, Jones versus Smith, as I've already predicted the main card fight. So in this video, this will be the prelim predictions. So without further ado, let's get to our first fight of the night and our first prelim of the night. So in our first fight, we have in the women's strawweight division, Viana versus Hannah Cifers. So in this fight, I don't really know how good Hannah Cifers is because she was really just brought in as a stepping stone for Maycee Barber, and she pretty much was used as a stepping stone. She did give Maycee Barber much more work than people expected, but she still was taken out there in the second round in a pretty much one-sided fight. So she was used just as expected. Then you got Viana, who's like 1-1 in the UFC, but she shows a pretty good skill set, a promising future, like that she can at least hold her own with the people in this division, given some time, but she's still looking solid. And then as far as how these two match up, Viana has a significant reach and height advantage over Hannah Cifers. I think both fighters are pretty well-rounded. There's no real gaping holes in either game, but Viana will have the height and the reach. I think she's a better striker, and I also think she's the better grappler as well in this fight. So I think really all things kind of favor Viana. I think she'll use that reach. I think if Cifers will need to get in, she might want to take a grappling approach, but I think Viana will be able to handle herself there as well. And I think she's probably going to choose to keep it in a striking match, knowing that she had that height and reach. So why even give Cifers a chance in this fight, really, by making it in the grappling matchup and allowing the shorter fighter to get in and maybe secure a takedown or anything. So I think she's going to use that height, use that reach, use that movement, and kind of just pick apart Cifers. I don't think it'll be like as easy as people expect it to be or as one-sided as people expect a competitive fight. But I think that really everything favors Viana in this fight. So in this fight, I got Viana via decision. Now on to our next fight we have in the bantamweight division, Vera versus Frankie Saenz. So how do these two match up? You got Frankie Saenz, who's 38, and that's old for any weight class, especially the lighter weight classes. When you reach like pretty much mid-30s in the lighter weight class, you're pretty much done for the most part, unless you're just really, really good. And Frankie Saenz is good, but I don't think he's really, really good. And his style is not the most technical in a way. Sometimes it's that kind of unorthodox in a way at times, especially the striking. His wrestling is pretty clinical, but his striking and especially his defense is very questionable, has always been questionable. And then going against the taller, longer, younger, better striker in Vera, I think that just doesn't bode very well for Frankie Saenz. Yes, he's scrappy and all, but I don't think his chin can hold it up anymore because he's been getting dropped a lot of times in his fights. He's been knocked out before in fights, and he's 38 now. And you're going against a better striker, still improving, a fighter who's 12 years younger than you, and pretty much has basically the same amount of MMA experience as you, so I don't think that really bodes that well for Frankie. I think Vera can defend his takedowns for the most part, keep it on in a striking, keep it a striking match, keep it on the feet, and exploit Frankie Saenz on the feet, using that distance, using that range, using these long strikes, sticking the jab in his face straight, maybe throwing a head kick in there. Because Frankie Saenz, for the most part, his head is pretty much up, his chin is up, it's high, and he's been clipped several times before, even in his victory. So in this fight, I think Vera keeps on the feet, defends the takedown pretty well, handles that pretty well. Like if grappling does come into play, I think he can handle his own when it's on the feet, and he has that distance. I think he exploits it, eventually catches Saenz clean on the chin, and then follows up with some ground and pound to get a TKO victory. I think it happens sometimes in the second round, maybe in the mid part of the second round. So in this fight, I got Vera via second round TKO. Now on to our next fight we have in the women's bantamweight division, Gina Mazany versus Chiasson. So we have the most recent women's winner of the Ultimate Fighter versus Gina Mazany. So Chiasson is the most recent winner of a women's section of Tough. So how these two match up? I think Gina Mazany actually probably the best fighter, the debut fighter for Chiasson to have in her bantamweight debut, dropping down from the featherweight division, because Gina Mazany not really the fastest fighter. She doesn't really have the best striking. So that's really what causes people problems a lot of time when they're dropping down to lower weight classes, is the speed. But I don't think Gina Mazany is the fast fighter. She's more of a physical fighter, so that's going to bode very well, or that's going to serve Chiasson very well in this fight, because she's the bigger fighter. She's going to be able to use that size. She's going to be the stronger fighter. What really kind of is the issue in this fight, or was threat that Mazany can pose to Chiasson, maybe her conditioning, being a 135er with decent conditioning, versus a fighter who's going to be cutting a lot of weight for the first time to make this weight class and struggle to make 145 at times. And maybe she can grind her out and test that gas tank. But other than that, I think Chiasson is the better striker. I think she's the better grappler, and along with that size on top, I don't think Chiasson is all that good. I just think that she's very big, and then she has some pretty decent enough. Her skills are pretty decent, but the real best thing about Chiasson, she's as big as a mug. That's pretty much she is, and she's gonna come out to be very strong, be very big, very physical. Versus another physical fighter, but she's gonna be the bigger, more physical fighter. She's gonna be able to exploit that, and she's gonna has a significant reach and height advantage. I think she has 5 inches of height over Mazany. I think about 5 inches of reach over Mazany. I think she'll be able to use all of that against her. I think she'll be able to clip her with her strikes from distance. It's going to be hard for Mazany to deal with all that reach and all that power and all that size. But I don't think Mazany's just going to give you a walkover. I think she's going to give her some work. But I think the physicality and the size of Chiasson is just going to be too much. So in this fight, I got Macy Chiasson via decision. Now on to our next fight. We have in the middleweight division, Edmund Shahbazyan versus Charles Byrd. So both men have a similar opponent in common. It was both their last fight. They both fought Darren Stewart. Charles Byrd got knocked out by Darren Stewart. Edmund Shahbazyan beat Darren Stewart by a split decision. But this is not MMA math. So one guy beat that guy, one guy lost that guy. But how I'm going to use that, the figure I'm talking about in Darren Stewart, or how I'm going to use the X in this situation, is that the fact that how they both approached that fight and how they both did in that fight. So Shahbazyan won, that's good. That's always better. But I feel like Charles Byrd actually had the better strategy, and up until getting knocked out, he was doing much better against Byrd he's doing much better against Stewart in my opinion in that fight. He was mixing his takedown with his striking very well, was able to get takedowns, was giving Stewart a lot of work. But the fact that Stewart was able to put that power on him, which kind of broke him down and stopped him in the second round. But up to that point, Charles Byrd was doing a much better job. He was much more clinical, much more clean with his technique, and is much more clean with his strategy and approach to fighting Darren Stewart. He just got broken down in court. I don't think Shahbazyan necessarily has the power that Darren Stewart has. And even Shahbazyan versus Darren Stewart was kind of like, as far as how styles match up, like sometimes you see fighters beat one guy and then lose to the guy that got beat. And I'm kind of saying that is what happened with this fight. You got Edmund Shahbazyan, who basically in that fight almost had the same situation with he did with Darren Stewart, Byrd had with Stewart. He was doing well with the grappling. Then in that third round, like really some parts in the second round, and definitely that third round, Shahbazyan started to fade. I think he landed like 1 or 2 significant strikes in that round, and Stewart landed like 30. And it was a split decision victory. And it probably could have went the other way with just off the grappling of Shahbazyan in the first 2 rounds, and then a little bit of the third round that allowed him to just get out of there with a decision. And I think he's been a younger fighter, younger than 25, so he's in his early 20s. So he's a little bit more durable, whereas Byrd is in his 30s. So he kind of have that youthful durability. And that kind of just allowed him to survive that fight and just take it as a learning experience. But as far as this fight, I feel like Charles Byrd's going to be a little bit stronger. I think his technique's a little bit more clean. He mixes it together a little bit better than Shahbazyan. But I don't know what Shahbazyan's going to bring in this fight, being such a youthful fighter that can evolve so quickly. But I don't think he's going to change necessarily too much in this fight. I think Charles Byrd, he's not going to be able to present the power that Stewart did against Charles Byrd. So it's going to allow Charles Byrd, to be able to mix in his game plan a little bit and just kind of outwork and out technique him and kind of blending together a little bit in Shahbazyan and win a pretty close fight. And I know that Byrd's the underdog and Shahbazyan's favored by a good margin, but this is a good underdog bet, and I'm going to lean towards the underdog in this fight and Charles Byrd winning a very close decision that a lot of people aren't expecting. So in this fight, I got Charles Byrd via decision. Now on to our next fight we have in the welterweight division, Diego Sanchez versus Mickey Gall. So this is another underdog fight, and Diego Sanchez has a very good shot of winning this fight because Mickey Gall, a very young fighter who hasn't really developed his striking, but has top-notch, or I'm not even going to say top-notch, but he has solid jiu-jitsu, and he's very crafty with his jiu-jitsu, and he could definitely hold his own with some of the best in the world, and even pure jiu-jitsu. I'm not saying he's going to be one of the guys that's going to be a world champion level, or he could beat those guys. Maybe if he focused purely on that, he could be that level, but he's pretty much decent with jiu-jitsu. He's like, I'm not saying decent, but like he's solid. I'm saying he's real solid with jiu-jitsu. And to not get too stuck on that, I'm just basically saying Mickey Gall more than could hold his own with some of the best in the world with his jiu-jitsu, and that's a real good feather to have in your cap. And Diego Sanchez at one point was pretty much the same, and he probably still is, or nah, I'm not going to say still is, but at one point he was even there grappling with Marcelo Garcia. I forget if he got tapped or not in that fight, that grappling match, but he held his own pretty well with Marcelo Garcia, who's one of the greatest grapplers of all time. So Diego Sanchez is no slouch, and he's been fighting for basically 20 years, and for a lot of the best fighters, and he has no submission losses on his victory. So a really interesting matchup. What I was basically trying to get to, the point I'm trying to get to in this whole prediction is that Diego Sanchez can win this fight. This is probably one of the most winnable fights for him in the division because Mickey Gall is developed yet with his striking. And so he can make it a grappling matchup. He can be the better striker in this matchup and like rush forward on Mickey Gall and not worry about getting countered as much, take him down, and probably try to win this by securing the top position and maybe some ground and pound and just holding the top position, maybe scrambling with Mickey Gall but maintaining that top control to win the decision like he kind of did against Jim Miller and kind of did against, what's his name? That leg lock specialist. I'm going to get his name right now. Marcin Hell. So, like, two of the three last fights, two of Diego Sanchez's last 3 wins were against top, like, pretty solid grapplers. And that's the same thing you see with Mickey Gall. But I'm still going to lean to Mickey Gall in this fight. There's a very real chance of Diego Sanchez winning this fight, so he'd be a good bet. But as far as this fight, I'm going to lean to Mickey Gall with his youth, his height. And he's just more there. Diego Sanchez is one of the most worn-out fighters in all of MMA. He's been fighting for so long. Yes, he probably takes pretty decent care of his body, but he's been knocked out so many times and been in so many wars that I don't really think he's going to be all there. And then plus Mickey Gall being a younger fighter and that ability for young fighters to evolve. You don't know if Mickey Gall will mix in his striking. Will work on his striking, especially coming into this fight. He might want to work on, put more time into his striking for this fight and more time into this and game planning. Whereas Diego Sanchez really just going to be Diego Sanchez in every single fight at this point. He's not really changing much up in his game. He's going to be the same guy you see every time he comes out there. So Mickey Gall can certainly put a game plan to him and not worry about Diego Sanchez changing too much. So really, I say there's so much tape on him, and Diego Sanchez is so worn out that I think Mickey Gall, being a younger fighter, he's going to find a way to win in a very gritty type fight. Diego Sanchez certainly not going to make it easy, but I think Mickey Gall probably going to make some striking, use that reach, that significant reach advantage he has, and probably land some strikes and probably go for some of his own takedowns or his own reversals or anything he could do. Looking for reversals if Diego Sanchez take him down, maybe look for his own takedowns, use that reach to just try to get hit. Outpoint Sanchez. But I think it's a very close. It just plays out as a very close fight. It might even be a split decision type fight. But I'm gonna lean to the youth, and I'm going with Mickey Gall via decision. Now on to our next fight. We got in the bantamweight division: Cody Stamann versus Alejandro Perez. So looking at this fight, Alejandro Perez has proved me wrong so many times. Well, he hasn't really proved me wrong. The judges have proved me wrong more than he has. I think he's been in a lot of fights, and I've been predicting him to lose every time out. Some fights he definitely should have lost. Some fights were real close. Some fights he caught some people. But he was like on a 6-fight winning streak. And he's like kind of a sleeping, like a very quiet winning streak. He just keeps going out there winning. Doesn't really do anything impressive, but he finds ways to win. That's really what the most impressive thing about Alejandro Perez. So he could be a good bet. He keeps being the underdog, but he keeps on winning. He doesn't do anything to really impress people, but what most impressive thing about him is he finds a way to win. So that's always a good thing. He's like the lucky cricket. He finds a way to win. And against Cody Stamann, it's going to be a pretty good fight because Cody Stamann will be a type of fighter that will put it on you the whole fight. He's also not a guy who's really not the most impressive, but what's most impressive about Stamann is that he has a solid chin, he has phenomenal cardio, and he'll put that pace on you the whole fight. And usually he breaks fighters down. Like they'll start out being the more technical, being the more gifted fighters, but he outworks them and breaks them down and starts taking them down and outworking them, and he wins those fights. And he just finally lost to Aljamain Sterling in the last fight. But he still put up a good performance until getting submitted. I think he's the better fighter in this fight. I think he can push forward against Perez, who really doesn't have, like that consistent power. Striking's not really the best. Takedown, he's savvy enough in the grappling. He's decent enough in the grappling, but nothing stand out in his grappling or his striking. I think Stamann could get on the inside and set up takedowns and pretty much just smother him. Just be one of those wrestlers that get up in your face and grind you out to a decision. I think he's a physically stronger fighter. I think he pushes a much higher pace, and he can do that. He can maintain that pace. He can push high pace, and he can maintain that high pace. And he just gets in Perez's face, closes that range, go for takedowns, and just works. I think he can strike with Perez as well, but I don't think he want to do that too much. And just utilize that wrestling advantage and win a decision. I think it's going to be a pretty clean, clear-cut decision. I don't think it's going to be maybe all that one-sided, because Perez is going to be kind of hard and slippery to get a hold of to begin with, but that constant pressure being constantly in his face, those takedowns will present themselves, and then Cody Stamann will take full advantage of those takedowns and secure them every round to win a clean decision. But in this fight, like I said, Perez keeps proving people wrong. He keeps winning. The judges keep giving him decisions, these close decisions. So he'd be a good bet to pick Perez. Underdog yet again. What's new? He'll likely get somehow find a way to win, but I'm leaning to Cody Stamann in this fight to out wrestle him, get in his face, and win a decision. So in this fight, I got Cody Stamann via decision. Now on to our co-prelim headliner we have in the light heavyweight division, Misha Cirkunov versus Johnny Walker. So Johnny Walker has taken the light heavyweight division by storm, along with some other fighters in a very short amount of time. He's long, he's wild, he's exciting, he's getting these finishes. So he's looking very scary, very exciting for the weight class, and he's giving the weight class a whole spark of excitement right now. Then you got Misha Cirkunov, who came in with a top prospect. They kind of fell off a bit, and now he's resurging. Like he came in, looked good, kind of fell off, took two bad losses, two finished like got submitted and got knocked out losses. Then now he's on a 2-fight winning streak, and he's looking good once again. But how I see this fight, you got Johnny Walker, who came in the UFC and pretty much fought two strikers. He fought Khalil Roundtree and he fought Justin Ledet. Now he's fighting a grappler. Misha Cirkunov does have striking, but what you really fear about him is his strength and that grappling. And I think I'm going to lean to Misha Cirkunov in this fight based off that grappling. We look at some of Johnny Walker's fights. His grappling is pretty kind of wild. I mean, he's good with his grappling, but it's kind of wild. And Cirkunov is much more clean with his grappling, that physicality. And also see that Johnny Walker was able to get taken down and submitted by better grapplers. It's still a question mark on his resume or to his name. Like, how will he deal with a physical, strong grappler that can put him down? Or will he be able to defend the takedowns? Or if he get taken down, will he be able to hold his own, maybe get some reversals? Or will he be able to out-grapple the grappler in this case? That's a question still on that needs to be asked. And I think Misha Cirkunov will ask that question. And whether or not Johnny Walker will answer it, this fight will tell it. So in this fight, I'm going to lean to Misha Cirkunov. I think it will be tough on the feet because Johnny Walker is just so unpredictable in ways with his striking. He's so wiry, so long, and he can't knock you out. He has some power, and his strikes come from all types of weird angles. But I think Misha Cirkunov's going to be able to back him up with his pressure, set up takedowns, take him down, and kind of work him a bit on the ground. I think Johnny Walker will hold his own on the ground, but I think the physicality, I think Cirkunov's top control is just so heavy, that's really going to smother Cirkunov's grappling and really allow Cirkunov to advance position on the ground. And I also think that Johnny Walker kind of gives up position a lot of times because he's so, those unorthodox fighters, they try to just jump to position instead of, like doing things the proper way. They try to do things in unorthodox ways. I think Cirkunov's going to see that, and he's going to take advantage of when Johnny Walker tries to do unorthodox positioning changes and most likely give up his back. I think Cirkunov takes his back, flattens him out, and gets a rear naked choke. I think that happens in the second round. So in this fight, I got Misha Cirkunov via second round submission. Now on to our main event we have in the featherweight division, Jeremy Stephens versus Zabit Magomedsharipov. So looking at this fight, you got Zabit, who has so much hype behind him in this fight. He's is seen as a future featherweight champion and also potentially a two-weight champion, maybe a lightweight champion as well, given his skill set and given his physical, like his size. So he's very big for the weight class. So they're saying he could definitely move up. He could dominate the lower weight class. I mean, he could dominate 145, and he could definitely go up to 155 and maybe dominate there as well, given his size and given his skills. So a lot of hype behind him, and he's been living up to the hype for the most part. You got Jeremy Stephens, who's a veteran of the game in both 145 and 155, has been in there with some of the best, has lost to the best more often than not, but he does have some wins over some of the best fighters to ever grace the octagon. So he's been in there with the best, traded hands with the best. Didn't always come out the winner, but he's been in there with the best, and the experience is there. And also, that experience is still on his side, and he has that ultimate equalizer with his power. But going to this fight, I think pretty much the style of this fight favors Zabit heavily. He's the taller fighter, and he has different weight, and he's the better grappler, better wrestler, sambo, or whatever you want to call it in this fight. But definitely, I'm going to say grappling and striking, both are on Zabit's side, in my opinion. He doesn't want to strike with Stephens too long or at Stephens' range. But if he wants to fight Stephens at distance, he can do it because he has that reach. I think he has the speed as well. Then that grappling. And also training with Frankie Edgar at the same gym as Frankie Edgar. He will have at least somebody to lean on for experience to how to approach Stephens. And Frank Edgar was pretty much able to take down Jeremy Stephens at will in that fight. Even when he got hurt, he was able to take down Stephens at will like he was a lightweight. I mean, like he was a feather or like he was a sack of potatoes. Just take him down at will. Despite Jeremy Stephens being bigger, despite being hurt, he was able to just throw Jeremy Stephens on the ground and lay on him when he was hurt at any time. And I think Zabit could do just about the same. So he could either do like the Moicano approach, where Moicano just fought Stephens from the outside and never really allowed Stephens to get in on the inside and land any real heavy strikes. Or he could go the Frank Edgar approach, use distance, use movement, and set up takedowns and to kind of control Stephens on the ground. I think his style is pretty much really tailor-made for Zabit, in my opinion. I think Zabit, he's not going to come at him like he fought Bogdan and allow him to get on the inside because he knows Stephens has that power. And I think he's training even more so for Stephens to definitely, so he'll be training on that movement so he can't allow Stephens to get on the inside at any bit in this fight because Stephens has too much power to risk that. But even if Stephens does land, I think Zabit's chin holds up pretty well because he's still a very young fighter who hasn't really got his chin tested too much. So his chin still should be pretty solid, still healthy. He probably will be able to handle some of that power, but definitely doesn't want to stay in the kitchen too long because you can't risk trading punches with Stephens and risk getting knocked out. There's really no point in that. There's no need to risk a firefight. So I think Zabit goes for the takedowns. I think he fights on the outside. And when Stephens overcommits, I think he goes for takedowns. He just mixes in takedowns and strikes, really fight on the outside, not allow Stephens to get in. And if Stephens gets too close, I think he changes angles, mixes in some takedowns, controls Stephens on the ground, lands some ground and pound. And for the most part, I think rinse and repeat. Striking on the outside, mixing in takedowns, out grappling, out working, outsmarting, out game planning Stephens to a pretty one-sided decision in my opinion. So in this fight, I got Zabit Magomedsharipov via decision. And that concludes my predictions for the prelims of UFC 235, Jones versus Smith. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and come back for more videos. Peace.